You were surprised when you heard my company name, right? So surprised you couldn't even speak? The reason for organizing this reunion was to put this guy in his place. Back in middle school, Eric used to lead the charge in teasing and bullying me. Even after becoming adults and meeting again, I can't stand the way he still looks down on me. I'm not the same person I used to be. So, which branch are you from? Huh? Branch? Well, I'm in California, so obviously the California branch. So, you're not working at the headquarters. Is working at a branch instead of the headquarters really something to brag about? Eric looks puzzled by my retort. What about you? Which company do you work for? I make a conscious effort to smile confidently, showing my teeth. This is where my great comeback begins. My name is Bill, and I'm 32 years old. I once attended Y Middle School, studying alongside my classmates. I graduated at 15, so it's been 17 years since then. Currently living away from my hometown, I returned to this town for the first time in a long while. In this area where you need a car to go anywhere, I drive my beloved Porsche around the places I used to hang out. The roads are well maintained, making it a very pleasant drive. As I turn the steering wheel and round a corner, a large building comes into view. Next to the big gate, the name Y Middle School appears. I drive inside, parking in the area for teachers and visitors. Getting out of the car, I walk past the gym and step into my old school building. Everything has changed from when I attended here. The buildings are new, and the school grounds are well maintained. The sun is still high, and I can hear the sounds of students engaged in school activities. I wonder if their middle school life is fulfilling. After touring the classrooms, I enter the staff room and visit my former homeroom teacher, Mr. Peterson, who is now the head of the 3rd grade. It was a Saturday afternoon, but several teachers were busy at their desks. I feel a bit of sympathy for them. When Mr. Peterson sees my face, he stands up with a smile. I put on a face that says I've come to visit an old mentor. Since I had informed him in advance that I would be visiting today, there are no issues. I'm leaving town tomorrow. Before I go, I wanted to see Eric and the others, so we're having a small reunion in one of the classrooms. Alright, feel free to use it. There aren't many kids now, so the classrooms on the 3rd floor aren't being used. This means I can fully express my feelings. I can't help but smile. Mr. Peterson has aged quite a bit. Mr. Peterson graduated from this middle school, entered the top high school in the state, and then went on to a city college. He studied in the education department at college and returned to his alma mater middle school upon graduation. In his first year as a teacher, he was our homeroom teacher. It's really nostalgic. Haven't you been around here much? No. I've been living over there the whole time. So coming back after so long and seeing all the changes has been quite surprising. Speaking of which, the 6 of you were always close. I remember you guys always messing around in the halls. I still remember it clearly. My body tenses at those words. If he remembers it so well, why didn't he do anything about it? Talking about being close and messing around, where was he looking? I wonder if the current 3rd year students are having a satisfying school life with a man like him as their head teacher. When I was in middle school, I didn't understand anything about life. I was still just an extension of an elementary school kid, thinking that adults were much greater than children and that it was natural to obey them. But now, I know that teachers have both strengths and weaknesses. Moreover, teachers are people who start teaching students right after finishing their college life, without experiencing the real world. Mr. Peterson might have tried hard to be a good teacher. But does that make my bitter feelings any lighter? In a few days, a piece of evidence of Mr. Peterson's affair with a student's mother will be sent to the state's education board. What happens after that is none of my concern, as I'll be leaving on tomorrow's flight. Dragging my left foot, I slowly exit the staff room. I head towards the 3rd floor classroom where I once spent time with my classmates. For me, with my immobile left foot, even the stairs of a middle school are a challenge to climb. Entering the classroom and gazing out the window absent-mindedly, Eric walks in. Eric gives me the same mean-spirited smile he used to have. Hey, long time no see. You haven't changed a bit. Still got that dumb look on your face. I don't know if I look the same as I did 17 years ago, but Eric has changed a lot. Even at just 32 years old, his belly sticks out, and his head is balding. There used to be girls who swooned over Eric, but they must be disappointed now. Long time no see. I'm glad to see you. I force a smile, saying words I don't mean. I have no fond memories of Eric. As a top student, Eric was the class leader and reigned over the boys. He had 4 henchmen, John, Tom, Mike, and Jake, who would bully anyone they didn't like. It was done in a way that made it seem like they were just having fun to the teachers. During breaks, they would drag me into the hallway and poke me with mops or hold me down and kick my stomach. Not only Mr. Peterson, but all the teachers favored Eric. Where were their eyes? Soon, I hear footsteps climbing the stairs, and other familiar faces appear. John, Tom, Mike, and Jake arrived. The teachers thought of them and me as part of the same close-knit group. When they spot Eric, they greet him warmly. Eric, long time no see. You've gained some authority since we last saw you. Well, being in sales, I get to eat out a lot. I've pretty much conquered all the popular spots in the city at clients' requests. Nice, take us out sometime. We're old buddies, after all. If I recall, it was Eric, John, and Tom who went to the city for college. Meanwhile, Mike and Jake stayed local, attending a nearby college and remaining in this town. Did you guys meet up often after middle school? No, we went to different high schools, so we haven't seen much of each other since. We all graduated from pretty good colleges. But that's to be expected, we were special even in middle school. I give a dry laugh at Tom's words. Did they think being special meant they could do anything? Eric was the ringleader, but John and Tom were no better. Mike and Jake followed Eric's orders, hoping to gain favor. To me, Eric was a bright, enviable figure admired by both boys and girls. John and Tom prided themselves on being Eric's best friends. Mike and Jake were more like admirers who followed Eric around. And I was their punching bag, there to relieve their middle school stress. Maybe after graduating, they faced their own struggles and learned to understand others' feelings. If they felt ashamed and apologized, I might be willing to forgive them. However, as adults, they just started bragging about their companies. Actually, Jake and I have started a business together. It's tough, but being your own boss is great. Mike and I have been close since middle school, and we get along well. We both stayed local, so he's the perfect business partner. Eric listens to Mike and Jake's conversation disinterestedly, gazing out the window. He must be waiting for someone to ask him about his own recent achievements. Hearing about others' success must not sit well with Eric. Reluctantly, I direct the conversation towards him. So, Eric, what are you up to these days? All I know is that you graduated from a city college. Eric's eyes gleam. Glad I asked, he relaxes and starts talking with enthusiasm. Actually, I work at Ford Pharmaceuticals. I've been at the top since I joined, and they're expecting me to become a manager soon. John and Tom, already aware of this, smile and nod in satisfaction. Mike and Jake look surprised. Really? That's amazing. I heard the New York headquarters recently started developing a drug that might be a breakthrough cancer treatment. It's all over the news. You're really working for an incredible company, Eric. Eric grinned, pleased with their praise. Then he looks at me, waiting for a reaction. You were surprised when you heard my company name, right? So surprised you couldn't even speak? The reason for organizing this reunion was to put this guy in his place. Back in middle school, Eric was the ringleader who teased and bullied me relentlessly. Even now, as adults, he continues to look down on me, which I can't tolerate. I'm not the same person I used to be. So, which branch are you at? Huh? Branch? Well, I'm in California, so obviously the California branch. So, you're not working at the headquarters. Is working at a branch instead of the headquarters really something to brag about? Eric looks puzzled by my retort. What about you? Where do you work? I make a conscious effort to smile confidently, showing my teeth. This is where my great comeback begins. I'm at the same company as you, Ford Pharmaceuticals. But I'm not at a branch. What do you mean? I've never seen you around. I work at the New York headquarters. That's why we've never met at the office. Eric and the others are stunned to hear that I work at the headquarters of such a prestigious company. If they knew I was an executive, their jaws would probably drop. I look at each of their faces with satisfaction. I invited them to our old school just to see these dumbfounded expressions. John, who was closest to Eric, speaks up. "Hey, why are we all here anyway?" "I got an email from Eric about a good investment opportunity. Since it's the holidays and everyone's home, it seemed like a good time to meet up." "Same here. I live near the city, so it's rare to see everyone. Plus, I heard Eric's making a fortune with his investments and living well." "What?" "I didn't send any emails. I got an email from Mike about his startup with Jake and their success in investments." Mike and Jake both exclaim, "Me too," at almost the same time. The five of them look at each other with suspicion. Being summoned to the middle school by emails no one admits sending would make anyone paranoid. I smile, feeling satisfied. "Of course. I sent those emails. You impersonated me and got everyone here? So it wasn't Mike who invited me?" "That's right. I knew the keyword investment would catch your attention. Plus, I knew the others had their own issues. None of them can understand why I called them to this classroom. For me, to resolve my feelings, it had to be this classroom. In middle school, I suffered from their relentless bullying and harassment. I clung to the hope that graduation would finally free me from them. But just before graduation, their roughhousing injured my spine. I was left with partial paralysis and couldn't even leave the house. I ended up missing graduation, feeling utterly defeated. I had to take a year off from the high school I planned to attend and visited countless doctors. A doctor at the local college hospital recommended a hospital in New York, so I left with my parents. I endured 3 surgeries and managed to recover enough to walk, but I was left with a slight paralysis in my left leg. While hospitalized, I arranged to transfer to a local high school, and after being discharged, I continued my studies in New York and graduated from college. Although I should have graduated a year later than my peers, I utilized the accelerated system and started my career on the same footing as them. I secured a job at one of the world's leading pharmaceutical companies, Ford Pharmaceuticals, and steadily built my career through hard work. Having spent so much time in hospitals, I understood both the doctor's desire to heal and the patient's pleas for help deeply. Kevin Ford, the CEO, started noticing me because I worked with the compassion needed to truly care for the people using our medicines. Mr. Ford occasionally gave seemingly impossible tasks, but I always managed to accomplish them. I even volunteered in African countries, working in clinics to ensure medicines reached those in need. My efforts were recognized, and last year, I became one of the company's executives. Eventually, through an unexpected source, I found out that Eric, who had tormented me in middle school, was working at the California branch. Hoping he might have changed, I spoke with people at the branch, only to find out that he was still bullying those in weaker positions around him. Hearing this made me furious. From that day on, I vowed to take revenge on Eric and his gang. I contacted the president of the California branch, Joseph, and obtained Eric's profile. It included his company email address, which I used for this plan. First, I decided to investigate Eric's life after middle school. Eric attended a local high school known for its strong sports programs and enjoyed a fulfilling high school life. Unaware of my suffering in the hospital, he spent his days playing soccer and even competed in the national championships in his senior year. He went to a private college in the city on a sports scholarship. However, life wasn't as sweet in college. Although he remained on the soccer team for 4 years, he never made it to the starting lineup and graduated without ever playing in an official game. He didn't excel academically either, but a senior in the soccer team secretly helped him out. When Eric landed a job at Ford Pharmaceuticals, his parents were overjoyed, as if they had won the lottery. In this sense, Eric was a dutiful son, making his parents proud. If he had continued working diligently, he could have advanced further and made his parents even prouder. However, a significant problem has arisen. Eric has invested a considerable amount of money, riding the recent investment boom. Sensing his vulnerability, I used the pretext of an investment opportunity to lure him here today. While tracking Eric, I also looked into the lives of the other 4. John, who graduated from the same high school as Eric, went to a private college in the city because he wanted to experience city life. His family ran a large liquor store back home, and his parents hoped he would take over the business. However, John had become completely accustomed to city life and never returned, securing a job at a major trading company. Up until this point, John's life had been going smoothly, but he faced a trial in his third year of employment. A colleague, who was also his rival, married the division manager's daughter. Since then, the rival rapidly climbed the corporate ladder and is now the sales manager at the headquarters. Meanwhile, although John is in the prestigious sales department, he is treated coldly by his rival and is enduring difficult days, or so I've heard. Tom, who was particularly close to Eric, faced difficulties with high school entrance exams. He aimed to attend the same high school as Eric and John but caught a severe cold on exam day and failed. He ended up at a backup private high school and had a reasonably fulfilling 3 years. As an admirer of Eric, Tom desperately wanted to follow in his footsteps and spent a year on preparing to get into the same college and department. However, Eric didn't value their friendship as much as Tom thought. With Tom a year behind, they rarely had classes together, and Eric rarely participated in soccer games. Eric started avoiding Tom, and their friendship cooled. In middle school, Tom thought he shared a special bond with Eric and John. But Eric didn't consider Tom that important. Tom must have been genuinely happy to receive an email from Eric. When I sent the email, Tom replied with a long message of gratitude. I was eager to see his reaction when he learned the truth. Now, seeing Tom in person, he's beyond disappointed, he's in shock. I felt a sense of satisfaction. Tracking Mike and Jake's lives were even easier. They had never left our hometown and were still living there. Moreover, they led completely different lives from the group that moved to the city. Mike's family owned an auto repair shop. Born as the son of the owner, he grew up without any hardships. However, he wasn't very bright, and his grades had always been poor since middle school. He managed to get into high school but dropped out because it was filled with rough students. He then spent several years shut in at home. His parents and relatives were worried about his future until Jake, an old friend, reached out to him. Jake proposed that they pool their money together to start a business. Mike's parents, more enthusiastic than Mike himself, provided the funding, leading to their current situation. Now, about Jake, he had a rather unique life. Like Mike, he wasn't good at studying. However, his family had a long history of city council members, and he grew up with plenty of freedom. He attended a decent high school and was the only one among the 5 of us to go to college abroad. It was more like a language study program and didn't give him much of an edge in the job market. He got a job at a well-known construction company in the state but quit after 3 years and drifted around. Eventually, inspired by a college friend who started a business, he decided to start his own company. He borrowed some money from his parents and approached his wealthy middle school friend, Mike. Mike's parents, worried about their son's future, were eager to support the venture. They succeeded in starting the business, but from what I heard from industry insiders, they were struggling significantly. So, posing as Eric, I emailed them, expressing interest in investing to help them out. Jake, thoroughly convinced, enthusiastically attended this reunion with Mike. In the end, I was the most successful among the 6 of us. Compared to me, the other 5 were losers. Barely suppressing my laughter, I quietly began to speak. It seems like you all have had pretty tough lives. Eric, I'm sorry, but I have no intention of supporting your investments. I also won't be providing funds to help Mike and Jake's company. You might as well self-destruct on your own. You knew we were struggling and called us here just to brag about your success? Exactly. I hear John and Tom are having a tough time at work. Mike and Jake spent a lot of money starting their business. But I've heard people in the industry say they might not last a year. Serves you right. John lunges at me, shouting, "You bastard." Just then, a woman's voice came from outside the classroom door. What are you doing? John, get away from Bill. Laura, you're here. Come in, we're done talking. A tall, beautiful woman with long black hair walks into the classroom. The 5 of them are visibly shocked when I call her Laura. Laura? Could it be the same Laura from middle school? That's right, Eric. You've changed quite a bit. But then again, it's been 17 years. Laura was the girl we all admired in middle school. She played a crucial role in my plan for this reunion. When I explained my plan, she said, "Sounds interesting," and eagerly joined in. My contact with Laura began surprisingly recently, about 3 years ago. I had vaguely considered this plan but hadn't thought of involving her. After middle school, Laura attended a prestigious private girls' high school attached to a college. She then continued to the same college, studying literature. Born into one of the most distinguished families in the state, Laura was doted on by her parents but lacked a sense of independence. She vaguely assumed she would marry a man of similar standing and become a housewife. Indeed, after graduating, she married quickly through a match arranged by her parents but eventually divorced. She didn't have any children but didn't mind. We met again by chance at a New Year's party hosted by my grandfather, a former congressman, which I attended as a representative of Ford Pharmaceuticals. When we met again, we quickly hit it off. Upon realizing we were both single, we naturally began to think about our future together. Since reconnecting with me, Laura started questioning her life of always following her parents' wishes and began actively participating in society. She now belongs to a volunteer organization, spending her days supporting single mothers. Standing before the 5 startled men, I quietly say, "We're getting married soon." "What? How could someone like you end up with Laura?" "Oh, I'd appreciate it if you didn't criticize my future husband." Laura takes my arm and leans into me in front of the dumbfounded group. At some point, the sounds of the students had faded away. The sun had completely set, so I turned on the classroom lights. The blue-white glow of the LED lights illuminated our faces, marking the conclusion of this chapter. Eric, in particular, looked even paler than when he first arrived. The 17-year reunion became my chance for revenge for all the hardships I endured in middle school. Leaving the 5 behind, Laura and I left the school together. Tomorrow, I'll take Laura and return to New York. It'll be a while before I come back to this town. Are you satisfied now? Yes, completely. I can start anew from tomorrow. Laura gently took my hand and pressed it to her cheek. Feeling her warmth, I decided to leave the past behind. Although I didn't cast a curse, the situations of the 5 continued to worsen. First, Eric, who was struggling with investments, made a risky bet and failed, forcing him to sell his newly purchased house. John, despite his rival becoming the division manager, made a mistake at work and was transferred to a remote branch. Tom's company went bankrupt, leaving him unable to find new employment, increasing his daily anxiety. Mike and Jake's company, as predicted, struggled financially and had trouble managing their funds. Thus, the long battle with Eric and his gang ended in my resounding victory. I will take Laura back to New York, and we will start living together in a luxury apartment. Although Laura was used to luxury, she has recently discovered the joy of being frugal and now makes sandwiches and goes to Central Park on weekends. While we never had financial difficulties, it's nice to save money as living costs in New York keep rising. In the near future, when we have children, we'll be able to provide them with a top-notch education. Today marks the 5th anniversary of reconnecting with Laura. As she hums a tune while making sandwiches, I secretly call to make a reservation at a fancy restaurant in the Empire State Building. "Ah! Someone help! This man just touched me down there." The woman's voice echoed through the hall where jazz music was playing. Now in the silent hall, there was a woman sitting down right in front of me, who looked unwell. She was the one who screamed. "What? What happened? He touched you down there, that means." "No, you have to listen to me." I was only trying to help her, but I couldn't bear the stares of the other guests, all whispering and looking at me. A few days later, for some reason, she showed up at my workplace and said, "I'd booked a private room at the hotel. You need to take responsibility for that day." "My name is Kevin Moore, I'm 19. I'm healthy but I've chosen a somewhat unconventional life. My parents passed away when I was in middle school, and my grandma took me in and raised me. But my grandma either wasn't in a position to take me in easily. She's always been frail and, if anything, needed help herself, but she made sure I could go through my compulsory education without any problems. Thanks to her, I managed to go through middle school without being excluded by my friends. So I had no worries about my future path. Kevin, go to high school. Even if you can't afford to go to college, it's better for boys to at least finish high school. My grandma encouraged me to go to high school, but I declined. Grandma, I can get a high school diploma even if I don't attend school during the day. What? I found out that there are 3 types of high school programs: full-time, part-time, and correspondence. Most kids attend full-time school during the day. Then there's the part-time program where they work during the day and attend school in the evening. The common factor is that in full-time programs, students attend school and take classes during the day on weekdays, while in part-time programs, they attend in the evening or at different times from the full-time schedule. So what is the correspondence? The correspondence education mainly involves learning through communication, so the number of times students go to school is different from full-time and part-time. So if I wanted to work during the day, part-time is fine, but I wanted to be around to help my grandma when her health wasn't good. That's why correspondence, where I could study from home, suited me better. So I work part-time at a food manufacturing plant during the day and study at my own pace. The good thing about the correspondence is that there's no need to worry about repeating a grade. Even so, I've been studying diligently and I'm close to graduating. I've also been working diligently at the food manufacturing plant. I've been working there since I graduated middle school, so I know quite a bit about the work. Fortunately, I already have a job lined up for after graduation. Yes, I'm going to work. But honestly, I'd have loved to continue my studies. Good morning. Hey there. Actually, I have another side to me. Saying it like this sounds cool and I've always wanted to say it, but it's not like I'm doing anything bad. This other side. It means I have another part-time job. My other part-time job is performing at a jazz bar. In other words, I'm a jazz pianist. Not that I've been formally studying piano seriously, but I just pay for lessons with my part-time earnings when I have time. The owner, Mark, gives me lessons, and since I passed his test, I get to perform on stage. Mark, is the owner of a jazz bar, carefully teaches me songs that match the bar's atmosphere. You see, the reason why I want to continue my studies. I have a dream of becoming a jazz pianist. Not the kind who plays classical music on a big stage, but a jazz pianist who performs with saxophones and trumpets on a small stage. Once you get hooked on that unique world, it's hard not to be there. However, pursuing a career in music, even if it's not jazz, requires money. To freely navigate the music world, you need financial stability. I want to live a healthy life with my grandma. That's why I was planning to give up on this dream. Then one day, something happened. During my daytime part-time job, I had an encounter. Once a month, executives from the head office come to inspect the factory. Some pretty high-ranking officials are coming that day. They're here again this month. A bunch of executives. Joseph, a colleague also known as Joe, whispers to me quietly. I nodded and continued working as usual. It doesn't matter who's watching, my work is the same every day, whether I'm being watched or not. Oh, but there's someone I don't recognize. At Joe's comment, I looked up and saw an unfamiliar face. It was the company president, Robert Smith, and behind him, there was a young woman. I know who that is. Kate? She's Robert's daughter, Sarah. She's a freshman at a well-known private university and is involved in a student organization that does volunteer work and plans events. That's what Catherine, also known as Kate, from the same part-time job, is laughing about. As expected, her information network is impressive. You're well informed. She's also famous as an influencer. I wonder why an heiress would come to inspect a place like this. Joe muttered sarcastically while checking the line of finished products. Indeed, this isn't the kind of place you'd expect an heiress to visit. But I couldn't help feeling envious of her, living in a completely different world despite being the same age, and sighed in resignation. After finishing my shift at the factory and changing clothes, my phone rang. I checked the caller ID, apologized to my coworkers, and answered the call right there. I couldn't wait until I got outside because the call was from the company where I had secured a job offer after graduation. Hello, this is Kevin. Sorry to keep you waiting. Then I moved to the corner of the locker room. Hello, this is James from HR at Cherry Corporation. Do you have a moment? Yes. Actually, due to our poor financial situation, we have decided to cancel our new hires for this year. What? We're very sorry, but we have to ask you to consider this as an unfortunate circumstance. James just delivered the bad news and hung up without waiting for my response. What? What did he just say? Unfortunate circumstance? What does that mean? My mind was spinning with confusion. My job offer had been rescinded. Was it because I attended a correspondence high school? I had carefully chosen what I thought was the best path, and this is the result? What am I going to tell my grandma? In a daze, I headed to my part-time job at the jazz bar. Ah! I sighed repeatedly while working. It's not like I get to play the piano here all the time either. When I'm not playing the piano, I clean and serve orders to the customers. However, I was quite distracted. I was aware of it, but the cancellation of my job offer was a big shock. Hey, Kevin. Ah, Mark. Come to the back room for a moment. Okay. I braced myself, thinking he was going to scold me for being distracted at work, but Mark offered me a seat and a warm cup of tea. Kevin, you're acting strange today. Did something happen? What? Everyone is worried. They say you seemed down. Hearing Mark's kind words, I shrank in my chair. But with the warm tea and Mark's gentle gaze, the emotions I had been holding back overflowed, and tears streamed down my face. I stained my black slacks, the uniform of the bar, but the tears wouldn't stop. Actually, today, my job offer was cancelled. What? They abruptly stopped new hires. Since I don't have parents and got my high school diploma through correspondence, I was probably the first to be cut. Wasn't your job offer with Cherry Corporation? They've been doing well lately, haven't they? Mark's words made me think, yeah, that's right. That's why the job listing didn't mention anything about educational background. But HR said, due to poor business conditions, we're canceling new hires. It wasn't a big corporation. Still, my grandma was so happy when I got a job offer from such a decent company. Hey, Kevin. Yes. If you want, why don't you keep working here? But I know there's a difference between a part-time job and a full-time position, and you might have other plans. But I'll do everything I can to support you, okay? Okay. I appreciated Mark's kindness and increased my hours at the bar. I wanted to earn as much money as possible. Kevin, there's a student group reservation on this day, can you work a full shift? Of course. A student group. I had heard that term somewhere recently. Which university's student group is it? That famous private university. Oh. I remembered. It was the daughter of President Smith who had come to inspect the food manufacturing plant. Kate had mentioned the student group the daughter joined. Kevin? Are you okay? No problem. I'll do my best that day. She probably didn't even know, let alone remember, the face of a part-time worker at the plant. With that thought, the day arrived. The students who came to the bar were all glamorous and sparkling. A world I had no connection to. Instead of feeling envious, I focused on my own job and carried out Mark's instructions. Knowing my dream, Mark gave me the opportunity to perform a few songs as an introduction. While playing the piano and observing the audience, I noticed something. Sarah, the daughter of President Smith, looked unwell in the corner of the bar. However, from the way other members were talking to her and trying to assist, it was clear she was the organizer of this event. An organizer at such events usually can't really enjoy themselves. They have to constantly keep an eye around to make sure everyone else is having a good time, and it's their job to come up with the plans. If the initial plan is poorly received, they need to have backup plans ready, so there's no time to relax. It's tough for a freshman to take on such a role, she must be having a hard time. Not knowing much about how universities operate, I wondered if this was normal as I finished my performance and started helping out in the hall. Miss, are you alright? Huh? Shall I bring you some water? I asked her as a hall staff member. I'm fine. I just stayed up all night planning today's event. I see. Please let us know if you need anything. I walked away, but I was worried about her staying up all night. However, I couldn't just focus on her. While doing my job, I listened to Mark's solo performance. I saw Sarah unsteadily heading out of the hall, probably to the restroom. However, she suddenly collapsed as if she had gotten dizzy, and I immediately rushed over to her. No one else noticed because they were all engrossed in Mark's performance. Miss, are you alright? I spoke softly while approaching her, but she didn't respond. If she was in such bad shape that she couldn't hear me, I couldn't just leave her there. Then I said, "Miss, excuse me," and touched Sarah to help her stand up. First, I intended to move her to the staff resting room where she could take a moment. I thought if she could rest there, she'd feel better. Ah! But as I supported her, she suddenly screamed. I was startled but kept holding her to prevent her from falling. No! Someone help! Oh, miss, hold on. No! Someone help! What? This man just touched my butt. I was shocked by Sarah's screams, but I couldn't let go of her since she was still unsteady on her feet. My heart was racing as Mark stopped his performance and looked over from the stage. The gathered students saw me holding Sarah's arm as she sat down, and they started whispering among themselves. That's disgusting, touching a girl in the dark. Shouldn't we call the police? Is this place safe with guys like him? Hearing those comments, I felt a deep shame and tears welled up. Ha! Sarah, who had started the commotion, seemed to realize the impact of her words. Excuse me for a moment. Kevin, calm down. Take deep breaths. Nodding at Mark's gentle voice, I took small, slow breaths. Miss, what happened? Mark asked softly and gently. Sarah, looking a bit awkward, began to speak. This guy touched my butt. And Kevin? Are you going to ask him too? Both sides need to be heard in situations like this. Mark's logical statements silenced Sarah. Kevin, did you really touch this customer's butt? No. The customer was unsteady and suddenly collapsed, so I was trying to help her to the break room to rest. I explained exactly what I did. Drag her to the back? What was he up to? Disgusting. That's just an excuse. Hearing the jeers from the university students made me feel even more miserable. All I could hear were voices criticizing and blaming me, causing me to squeeze my eyes shut. Quiet down. Mark's shout brought silence to the hall. The way our staff handled this might have been inappropriate for a woman. As the manager, I apologize for that. Miss, I am truly sorry for the careless handling. Mark bowed his head towards Sarah. However, please understand that our staff was trying to help you. Well, I understand that. He was the one who noticed I wasn't feeling well. It seems Sarah remembered when I had checked on her earlier. The other university students were clearly unhappy with this outcome and continued to murmur. Seeing some of them trying to point their phones and cameras at us, Mark immediately stepped in. Please refrain from taking any photos. This is not a matter for those uninvolved to amuse themselves with. If my staff faces any defamation without evidence, we will take appropriate action. This is not a threat, it's a promise. Mark's firm declaration silenced any objections. After that, Mark took Sarah and me to the back room. In the hall, the jazz performance resumed, and the students' chatter filled the air. I'm sorry for touching your butt. I didn't mean to. I immediately apologized to Sarah. And sorry for causing a scene, Mark. No. Kevin, you're exhausted from working day and night, aren't you? Don't worry about here. Mark reassured me, and I nodded repeatedly at his comforting words. Oh, I thought I'd seen you somewhere before. You work at my dad's factory, don't you? Oh, so you're familiar with the food manufacturing plant where Kevin works during the day? Yes, so you're working at my dad's factory too. Her voice was filled with pity for my situation. Privileged Sarah attended university without any significant hardships. Having to work both day and night, that's so sad. What? Her casual comment made me raise my voice slightly. How could I describe my emotions at that moment? A complex mix of anger and a deep sense of helplessness. You have no right to call me sad. I'm here because I want to be. I said quietly, glaring at Sarah. A few days after this incident, I was stopped as I left the factory after my shift. Hey, Kevin Moore. Hearing my full name, I turned to see Sarah. I need to talk to you. I don't have anything to say. We had agreed to keep the bar incident quiet. So I couldn't understand why she was approaching me now, and my response came out cold. It's important. Not here, though. So, what is it? Could you please accompany me? I've arranged for a private dining room where no one can overhear us, she said. I thought, this is why rich people. But seeing the seriousness on her face, I decided to comply. She took me to a reasonably upscale hotel. As she had said, we were shown to a private room in the hotel's restaurant, where she sat across from me. Today is the bar's day off, right? So, you don't have any plans afterward, do you? You seem well informed. Yes, that's correct. That's why I'd prefer to spend time with my family on days like this. Sarah looked down, feeling awkward. I want to apologize for what happened that day. Afterward, my dad scolded me. The bar manager, Mark, is actually my dad's friend, and it seems he told my dad everything that happened. I was somewhat surprised by this revelation. I didn't know that Mark and President Smith were friends, which explained why Mark was so understanding of my situation. My dad scolded me. He said I took on the student group work half-heartedly, ended up getting sick, caused trouble for everyone, and said awful things to someone who was working so hard. He made me realize how spoiled I've been. Sarah said calmly, looking like she was about to cry, which made me feel a bit uncomfortable. I'm quitting the student group. I see. It was probably for the best. There was no point in staying in a group that pushed her to the brink of collapse. By the way, your piano playing that day was wonderful. Oh? Thank you. I replied vaguely, surprised by Sarah's sudden compliment. Hey, have you thought about furthering your studies seriously? What? You love playing the piano, don't you? I do. But if you've heard about my situation from Mark, you should know that's not possible. Currently, my highest level of education is a high school diploma, but some people still mock me for attending a correspondence high school, considering me as good as a middle school dropout. My only family is my grandma, and we can't afford the expensive tuition of music education. I can't burden my grandma. Did you know that my dad runs a scholarship program for arts universities? No, I didn't. If you're financially struggling but have good grades, they cover not only tuition but also provide a monthly stipend equivalent to a full-time salary. You know what I mean? Hearing this, I started to think. I fit the criteria of being financially struggling with no parents. But what about my grades? I thought about how beneficial the tuition and monthly stipend equivalent to a full-time salary would be, but then shook my head. Even so, my grandma is already elderly, and I want to be close enough to help if anything happens. Additionally, the school offers grants that don't need to be repaid. With these combined, you wouldn't have to worry about money and could focus on studying freely. Mark said you have the talent to qualify for these scholarships and vouched for you to my dad, Sarah continued. Mark did? My dad also said that seeing your hard work at the factory, he fully supports you. How about it? Are you willing to give it a try? Her offer sounded incredibly appealing. Of course, you can continue working part-time at the factory as long as it doesn't interfere with your studies. Your salary will even increase. If the commute or physical strain is an issue, my dad said he could help find a different job for you. Something that balances well with your studies. Why are you going this far? I was confused by the sudden offer. From the incident that day, I realized that my involvement in the student group was mostly self-serving. I claimed to be helping those in need. But I was just indulging in a sense of self-righteousness, she explained. What do you mean? That day's events made me realize it. I'm grateful to you for giving me that wake-up call. So now, I want to help you achieve the life you truly want, Sarah said, looking up at me with a slight tilt of her head. Or is this just another act of self-indulgence? I gently shook my head at Sarah's self-deprecating comment. No, it's not. Thank you for telling me about this opportunity. But, as I said this, I wondered if I really had the ability to succeed in this new path. Even if I followed the path I loved, I was unsure if I could make a living from it. To be honest, I was scared. But, be clear, she urged. Yeah, I replied. You have talent. Both my dad and Mark believe in you. And of course, so do I. Really? Absolutely. You have many people supporting your dream. Sarah's kind yet strong words washed my hesitation away. Responding to her encouragement, I found myself saying, "Thank you. I'll give it a try." Sarah smiled at my response. I heard that loud and clear. A man should keep his word once he said it. Of course. Good. And one more thing. One more thing? Take responsibility for touching my butt that day, Sarah said with a triumphant look on her face. I was momentarily stunned, then broke into a smile. Ha, you know that was your own doing. I couldn't help but laugh as well. Now, let's enjoy our meal today, and we'll discuss the details later. I've never dined in a private room before. My dad said this is his way of saying thanks, so order whatever you like. The shrimp ahijo here is delicious. Watching her laugh so joyfully in front of me, I felt a mix of confusion and happiness about this unexpected opportunity. Determined to face my fears, I decided to pursue my dreams wholeheartedly. Oh no! The chef ran off with the restaurant's money. If this keeps up, the restaurant will go under, and so will my dad. As I headed to the diner I'd become a regular at while traveling, the waitress, looking pale, rushed out of the restaurant. When I asked her what happened, she explained that her father, the head chef, was hospitalized. And another chef they trusted had taken all the restaurant's money. I'm currently unemployed, but I used to be a chef at a fancy restaurant in New York. But, considering what I did, is it really okay for me to step in? The waitress in front of me hung her head and started to cry. I mustered up my courage and made a suggestion. I was a chef. Maybe I can help. If you don't mind, could you let me use your kitchen for a week? My name is John. I'm 32 now, and though it might sound strange hearing from me, I've caused an unbelievable amount of trouble for many people. Today, I want to share my story. After graduating high school, I didn't go to college and instead I chose to go to culinary school without hesitation. At that time, I was thrilled by the dream of becoming a chef. Looking back now, I think I was quite innocent then. In culinary school, as long as you graduate, you basically get a chef's license. I studied the basics diligently from the start, graduated, and entered the culinary world. After graduating, I got a job at a fancy restaurant in New York. You might get an idea of the chef's world from a TV show that once made waves depicting a chef's growth. It's really strict with hierarchy, and the one who joins even a day earlier is your senior. Initially, you're only allowed to do menial tasks like cleaning, washing dishes, and taking out the trash. Some classmates in the dorm even had to do their seniors' laundry. I endured such treatment and trained intensively for 3 years. I think these 3 years were about building endurance, dealing with the instructions and sometimes unreasonable demands from seniors, and seeing if you could keep up. Another important thing to learn during this period is building physical strength. Chefs are often thought to just make meals, but it's actually physically demanding. You need as much power as someone in a sports team. A stock pot can weigh several kilograms when full, and flour or sugar comes in 60-pound bags. So your arms ache with muscle pain every day until you get used to it. After 3 years of training, I returned to my family's restaurant, the Johnson, to work under my father. But initially, I think I was spoiled because I was his son. I thought I'd get to cook right away, but I had to start from scratch, doing menial tasks again. What? I've been training for 3 years. I don't care. Here, you're a rookie. I can't let someone like you handle a knife. Why not? If I let you make food for our customers, the restaurant would go under. You're in the way standing there. Go wash those pots. I never got along with my dad. We clashed and yelled at each other constantly. After 5 years of that, I secretly started thinking about going independent. Then my dad suddenly passed away. It was a day off for the restaurant, but my mom got worried when he didn't wake up even by noon and found him already gone. He was struck by acute myocardial infarction, the most common cause of sudden death. So at 27, I suddenly had to take over my dad's role. I always wanted to cook. I wanted many people to eat the food I made and be happy. Even though my wish was finally coming true, I was terrified. The Johnson was a well-known restaurant in the area. The pressure of running that restaurant was immense. After my dad's sudden death, customers visibly dwindled. But that was a testament to how great my dad's cooking was and how much people loved it. I realized how great my dad was only after he was gone. I was prepared to close the restaurant, but I remembered why I came back to this place and why I wanted to become a chef. So I decided to work like my life depended on it. I aimed to faithfully recreate my father's flavors and improve our service. I was the first to arrive in the morning and the last to leave at night. On my days off, I would go out to study the service and flavors of famous restaurants. Seeing me like this, the employees who were halfway considering closing the restaurant re-evaluated their attitudes toward work. First, there was my senior, Tom. We all called him Big Tom because he was my mentor and always looked out for me. Even the waiters who directly interacted with customers started supporting my vision. I think we were all desperate during this time. Initially, people came to the restaurant because it was my father's place, but they began to spread the word about our hard work and service. And those people posted about us on social media. Thanks to that, the restaurant gradually became lively again. As the employees worked smoothly together, we eventually received the highest ratings for our food and service on social media. Even amateur reviews made us happy. And then, without us even realizing it, our restaurant, the Johnson, was featured in the Michelin Guide. What's more, we received the highest rating of 3 stars. 1 star means a very good restaurant in its category. 2 stars mean excellent cooking, worth a detour. 3 stars mean exceptional cuisine, worth a special journey. Our restaurant was rated as a place worth traveling to just for the food. We received 3 stars on our first listing. This was unprecedented. I was on cloud 9. But receiving this rating made me completely arrogant. The 3 stars were a recognition of the restaurant, not of me personally. Yet, I got cocky and started yelling at the employees for being slow. Now, I understand. I see how arrogant and selfish I was. I was acting like a conceited fool. It's no wonder that people like Big Tom, who had to put up with my snide remarks, were unhappy. The camaraderie we had once shared began to dissipate, and I was constantly frustrated when things didn't go smoothly. Then one day, a decisive event occurred. During a lunch break, I raised my voice. That was the last straw for Big Tom. Enough is enough. You're just a second-generation owner. We helped because we appreciated your father, not you. What do you think you're doing? Big Tom? How dare you talk to us like that? You couldn't have done anything without us, right? You're just a rookie acting all high and mighty. Big Tom blurted out all at once and slammed a bottle of cooking oil on the floor. The bottle was the Johnson flavored oil. It was made by my grandfather, whom I respected greatly. The bottle shattered with a crash, spilling its contents on the floor. Grandpa's oil. At that moment, something snapped inside me, and before I knew it, I was grabbing Big Tom by the collar. Big Tom! Calm down. John, stop it. Calm down. Everyone immediately stepped in to stop us, and fortunately, Big Tom wasn't hurt. But at that moment, a freelance journalist named Mark, who had come to request an interview, saw everything. The incident quickly became news, and bad rumors spread like wildfire. Online news, social media, gossip among students and housewives. By the next day, reservations were canceled, customers stopped coming, and we were forced to close the restaurant. It was only then that I realized how foolish I had been and how much of a jerk I had become. I brought this on myself. After paying the employees their wages and severance pay up to that day, I left all the remaining procedures to the lawyer and left New York. Eventually finding myself in my father's hometown of Vermont. This is the town where my grandfather lived as a cooking oil maker. Feeling nostalgic, I wandered aimlessly. I walked for about an hour. Eventually, hunger struck, and I turned into an alley where I spotted a building that looked like a diner. There was a sign hanging at the entrance, but it was too worn to read. As I approached, I caught a whiff of a wonderful aroma. Is this broth soup? The smell was nostalgic and clearly crafted with care. It smells just like the one my father used to make. Drawn in by the aroma, I stepped inside. Welcome! Inside, contrary to the exterior, stood a beautiful woman in pretty clothes. She looked to be in her late 20s, and her elegant, enchanting smile left me momentarily frozen. She quickly brought over water and a hand towel. What would you recommend? Well, everything is good, but how about the stew, a traditional dish of this region? Today's stew includes mountain vegetables and mushrooms. I'll have that, please. Certainly. The woman retreated to the kitchen. While waiting for the food, the aroma of the broth filled the room, almost bringing me to tears. Trying to hide my emotions, the food soon arrived. The meal was exceptional. The broth was highlighting the ingredients' natural flavors. The meat was tender, with condiments that complemented rather than overshadowed the aroma, and I finished the meal in no time. Ah! It was truly delicious, and I was thoroughly satisfied. Thank you for the meal. On my way out, I stayed at a hotel near the station that night. From that day on, I frequented the diner daily. It wasn't just the food, perhaps it was also to see the woman's bright smile. As I kept visiting, I learned more about her. Her name was Emily. She was the waitress of the diner Sagan, and I felt that many customers, like me, came to be healed by her smile. A week after arriving in Vermont, I decided to visit my grandfather's grave and the local cooking oil manufacturer. That day, there was a free tour, and many visitors were coming and going. Inside, there were large barrels as tall as me. Now, we will let you taste this special flavored oil. It has a mellow flavor that goes well with vegetable dishes and stews. As the artisan opened the barrel lid, a rich yet sharp aroma filled the air. Strangely, it wasn't unpleasant. I could see that they take care of the oil, and I saw pride in their faces. Their faces overlapped with those of my grandfather and father. As I was moved, I returned to the diner with a renewed heart. However, the taste of the food that day felt different. The kitchen wasn't visible from the seating area, so I couldn't see what was happening. Puzzled, I paid the bill without saying anything. In the end, I stayed in this town in Vermont for almost a month. During that time, I had plenty of moments to think and consider my future. I experienced the kindness of the people in this town, which made me reflect on my foolishness. Why did I do such things? I was filled with regret. It's about time to leave this place, I thought, but before leaving, I decided to stop by the diner one last time. At lunchtime, the busiest time of the day, I noticed that the sign was not out. Oh? Is it a day off? As I was about to leave, thinking it couldn't be helped, Emily rushed out of the diner. Her face was pale, and she looked very distressed. I couldn't move and just stared at Emily. Then our eyes met. Oh, sir. What's going on? You seem quite flustered. Well, if you don't mind, please tell me what's happened. I may not be much help, but... After a moment of hesitation, Emily invited me into the diner. She brought me some water, and after we sat down, she began to explain the situation. Actually, my father, the owner and chef, has been hospitalized with a heart condition. Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. I thought it must be tough, but surely there were other chefs. There is more than one chef. My father left the restaurant to his friend, Steve, but Steve has. What happened? Of all things, he ran off with the diner's money. What? Have you contacted the police? Embezzling the restaurant's earnings is a serious crime. It could be prosecuted under embezzlement and theft laws. Even if she didn't want to make it a criminal case, she could still fight it in civil court. However, Emily shook her head silently. I need to pay the hospital bills next week. There are also other expenses. I don't know what to do. Seeing Emily in despair, I frowned. When we found out about my father's hospitalization, we considered closing the diner. But Steve said, "Don't worry about the restaurant. Just focus on your treatment. Leave everything to me." My father completely trusted his words because Steve said, "You've done so much for me, now it's my turn to help you." How heartbreaking. I can't cook like my father. How can I report this to him while he's sick? With her face in her hands, Emily was on the verge of tears. I mustered up the courage to tell her my story. I used to work at a restaurant. I know it might seem presumptuous, but maybe it's fate. If you'd like, I can help. Really? Your father's food was delicious. I can't replicate his exact flavor, but I can help explain the situation and provide the food. But weren't you planning to leave? I was, but I've changed my mind. I didn't have any specific plans anyway. Emily accepted my offer. However, I haven't used a kitchen in a while, so my skills might be rusty. Could I use the kitchen for a week to get back into practice? Of course. Emily showed me the kitchen. On the counter was an empty bottle of flavored oil which I used to see. Noticing my gaze, Emily explained, it was given to us by someone who used to work with my father. And if you're going to use the kitchen, why not stay at our place? We have an extra bed. I feel a bit unsafe being alone. I thought it might still be unsafe with me there, but she added, Steve might come back. I wouldn't insist otherwise. Just until my father returns. I understood her reasoning. Considering the cost of the hotel, I hesitantly agreed. A week later, I prepared omelette, stew, and grilled chicken as on the menu. In addition to the wild vegetable and stewed dishes that were originally on the menu, I also added some new dishes. The vegetables from this region are exceptionally delicious, and I believe it will highlight the dishes. I wanted our customers to enjoy this as well. This menu was created with that wish in mind. The wild vegetables were harvested from the nearby hills and the eggs were bought cheaply from a local poultry farm since the sizes were non-standard. The other ingredients were acquired for almost nothing from a local factory that was ready to discard them. Emily also sourced vegetables from local farmers. With everyone's help, we created this menu. And so, after a week, the diner Sagan reopened. Emily had posted information on social media and handed out flyers at the station. During tourist season, not only locals but also many tourists came, and we were so busy that we didn't have a moment to rest. Making over $2,000 in a day. Now we can pay the hospital bills. Thank you, John. Then came the day Emily's father, Ken, was discharged from the hospital. Emily had gone to the hospital to handle the discharge procedures, and they returned together. Only to be surprised by the line of people in front of the diner. What's all this commotion? There's a line outside the diner. Well, a customer named John kindly helped us out. John? Seeing Ken's surprise, I couldn't stay silent and explained my situation. Let me introduce myself properly. I'm John Johnson. I used to work as a chef at the restaurant The Johnson in New York. What? That's a famous restaurant. Emily said, looking at me in surprise. The Johnson flavored oil you used in the kitchen was made by my late grandfather. I see. I thought the name sounded familiar. You must be Michael's son. Michael was my father's name. Michael and I worked together at the restaurant Smith. He was my senior and looked after me. He was an amazing chef. Yes. When I finished my training and told him I was returning to Vermont, he gave me that flavored oil as a farewell gift. I was a big fan of it. And I believe it's what kept our diner going. I love my grandfather's flavored oil too. Indeed. So, I have a request for you. Ken straightened up and took a formal posture. I followed suit and straightened my back. Would you stay here and help my daughter run the diner? I thought for a moment but gladly accepted his request. Since Ken was not fully recovered, he took charge of making small dishes. The carefully mixed eggs created a perfectly fluffy omelet that quickly became popular. Enjoy the omelet as it is and then use the flavored oil to get a different flavor. Also, try adding the oil to the stew. The aroma will fill your mouth. I explained the recommended ways to eat to the customers. When the flavors complement each other, the possibilities are endless. Thanks to this kind of service, more customers kept coming. One day before opening, a familiar face came to the diner. Sorry, we're not open yet. Oh. It was the freelance journalist, Mark. Well, John. Long time no see. Oh well. Do you remember me? After that incident, I wondered where you'd gone, and here you are. His smile was still creepy. What do you want? I don't know about his past, but John is now doing his best to run this diner. If you're here to cause trouble, please leave. Oh. You don't know what he did? It's impossible not to know about such a famous restaurant as the Johnson. Fights among chefs are common in this industry. Emily firmly stated, trying to drive Mark away. You're as bold as ever, miss. Who are you? A new figure appeared. From Emily's reaction, I realized this man was Steve, the one who had stolen the diner's money. What are you doing here? I want revenge on Ken. On my father? When I told this journalist, he agreed to help me. That's why here I am. It seemed Steve and Mark had teamed up to get revenge on Ken. Steve. Hey, Ken. You look well. I am disappointed in you. What do you want from me? Ken came out from the back, still addressing Steve politely. Ha, you're always the nice guy. Unlike me, you're popular. I hated you since our days at Smith. I should have been more skilled. But everyone favored you. It was unbearable, even Michael favored you. Steve's shout struck a chord with me. Then, I got hooked on gambling, fell into debt, and stole from the diner. I took the money that day, and no one should have noticed. How did they find out? Apparently, Steve had been stealing even when he worked at Smith. You ratted me out to the owner back then, didn't you? I got fired because of you. Traitor. Blaming others for his crimes, what a piece of work. I might be a jerk, but Steve is on another level. What? I didn't do anything. Liar. It's not a lie. Yes, it is. Once again, Mark interrupted the conversation. His creepy smile made his enjoyment of the situation even more unsettling. I was the one who told the owner. What? You weren't on my side? I'm committed to telling the truth to the world. I'm not on anyone's side. When I saw you stealing, I told the owner I'd write an article. He said it wouldn't be worth a penny and discreetly fired you to avoid a scandal. He told the staff you left due to health reasons. What? Steve must have been tempted by something. The Steve I know wouldn't do such a thing, right? Ken's words left Steve silent. Trust takes a lifetime to build but only a moment to destroy. Oh, no. Steve, realizing his mistake, hung his head, and I also reflected on my past. Ken, I'm sorry. Everyone makes mistakes. What's important is having the courage to face them. Steve and John are trying to change. We shouldn't destroy their promising futures, right, Mark? Mark smirked. With Ken and Mark's help, Steve became involved in community revitalization. He sometimes wore the local mascot costume, Buddy, posing for tourists and promoting the town. There are people who need me here. That makes me happy. I'm very grateful. Life offers countless chances to start over. It's crucial to face yourself and let go of pride. Steve's issue is now resolved. I also asked Mark to arrange a meeting with Big Tom later. I wanted to properly apologize for what happened back then. When I met Big Tom after a long time, he was surprised to see me, but he accepted my apology and said I was also at fault. Finally, I went to my father's grave to apologize. Upon returning to Vermont, I proposed to Emily. We got married. And now, the three of us run the diner together. There was also talk of being featured in the Michelin Guide again, but after discussing it with Ken and Emily, we decided to decline. Being listed in the Michelin Guide might attract more customers, but we chose to focus on each customer individually. Haha, that's just like you. Emily laughed beside me. I want to protect this smile forever. Alright, let's make our customers smile again today. Yes. The delicious aroma of our broth fills the diner once more. It's time to open. Honestly, a brother who can only get day labor jobs with a middle school education is nothing but a burden to us. Ha ha ha. The father of the groom, whom I met for the first time at my sister's wedding, insulted me like that during his speech. If this continues, my sister's big day will turn into a sad memory. Feeling many emotional glances directed at me, I was thinking about how to respond when. That's enough. My sister, with tears streaming down her face, suddenly stood up. I was told to keep this a secret from my brother, but the truth is, my name is Mike. I may look like any other kid, but my parents were something else. I know it's not good to talk about your parents that way. But they were really awful, and I hated them. The only reason I didn't run away from them was because of my sister. My dear sister is named Emily. I couldn't stand seeing her get hit by our parents. Maybe I also wanted to protect her as her older brother. I don't consider my parents to be real parents. Why? Because they were always fighting and never showed us any love. Sure, they gave us food, but it was only one meal a day, and on school days, we didn't even get that. There's school lunch, so there's no need to feed you at home. That was my mother's opinion. Because there was nothing to eat at home, I always made sure to eat as much as I could at school. Sometimes, when a classmate was absent, I would get permission from the teacher to take home leftover bread or desserts and secretly eat them to stave off hunger. During summer vacation, both Emily and I would lose weight and go back to school looking thinner. Our teacher, Mr. Smith, suspected that my parents were neglecting us. Thankfully, we weren't subjected to physical abuse, but the neglect we experienced is what you would call child abandonment or child neglect. Mr. Smith even came for a home visit to subtly check on our environment, but my father would say, "Mind your own business." My mother would chase him away, saying, "A mere teacher shouldn't interfere with family matters." Our neighbors seemed concerned about the abnormality of our home but hesitated to help openly, perhaps fearing the consequences. That's fine. It's natural for everyone to prioritize their own safety and protect their families. It's only natural to think that getting involved in facing the fallout isn't worth it. So, I decided to prioritize protecting Emily above all else. When we were both suffering from the lack of attention and nutrition from our parents, an incident occurred at our house. While we were at school, our parents got into a huge fight that ended up involving the police. They threw things at each other, broke windows, and screamed at the top of their lungs, prompting the neighbors to call the police. Their fight was so intense that the responding officers had to physically restrain them. My father was injured by shards from a broken vase. And my mother was beaten so badly her face was swollen. After receiving treatment at the hospital, both were charged with assault and taken into custody. During their questioning, our neglect also came to light. At first, there was talk of sending us to a foster care facility since we were minors, but our distant relatives, the Johns, stepped up and offered to take us in. It was Tom who came to pick us up, and we had always affectionately called him Uncle Tommy even before then. We had to transfer to a new school, but since Uncle Tommy and his wife, Natalie, were always kind to us, we accepted their offer without hesitation. Tom and Natalie ran a small handyman business. I continued my education up to middle school while observing their work. During summer breaks, I would help with the business. The smiles and gratitude from the neighbors showed me the joy of the handyman work. So, when it came time to decide on my future in my third year of middle school, I chose to join the handyman business without hesitation. Tom and Natalie told me, "You can go to college if you want," but I turned down their offer. They weren't wealthy, yet they took us in. I didn't want to be a further burden. I wanted to earn the money for Emily's education myself. By taking on the heavy and demanding tasks, I wanted to contribute to the handyman business and repay the couple for their kindness. So I have no regrets about my choice. Emily also took the initiative to help with housework and grew into a well-liked young woman in the neighborhood. With Emily handling the household chores, the couple and I could focus on work, and the handyman business thrived. However, just before Emily graduated high school, another incident occurred. That day, I had taken the day off to buy a gift to celebrate Emily's acceptance into college and was at the department store. The incident was that Tom and Natalie got into an accident while out on a job. The only consolation was that they died instantly without suffering. With the help of our relatives, we managed to hold the funeral, but we lost our last dependable guardians and were left on our own again. Although it was lonely, we couldn't afford to stop moving forward. According to their will, I inherited the handyman business. "I'll quit college and help you, Mike." "Don't be silly. You worked so hard to get into college, so go and study." "But you need to study hard, get a good job, and be happy." "Mike." I managed to convince Emily, who was ready to give up college, to stick to the original plan and send her off. I didn't want Emily to suffer, and I wasn't going to change my mind about that. Her college was out of state, and she was moving into a dorm in the fall. We stayed in touch regularly after she started college, updating each other on our lives. Emily graduated on time and got a job at the company she wanted. She steadily built her career, and after about 3 years, she told me she was getting married to the man she had been dating. "Congratulations, Emily." "Thanks, Mike. I could tell from her excited voice over the phone that she was genuinely happy. "It's all thanks to you that I got to go to college. It's your hard work that paid off. It's hard to believe little Emily is getting married. I'm so proud." "Hey, stop talking like that." When I mention something from my childhood, Emily reacts. I secretly smile, imagining her face turning red with anger. Emily I had always protected was getting married. I had always wished for her happiness. Despite being born to such toxic parents, she grew up to be a kind person. I wanted her to be the happiest person in the world. "Hey, Mike, I have a favor to ask. I'll do anything for my sweet sister. We're having the wedding in the next county. Will you come?" "The wedding?" Of course, I wanted to attend my dear sister's big day, but I only had a middle school education. I was concerned that if someone at the wedding cared about such things, it might make Emily feel uncomfortable in her new life. Some might think it's outdated, but there are still people who care about one's highest level of education. If they equate someone with only a middle school education with poverty or stupidity, they might think the same of Emily. Of course, there are other reasons as well. "Please, I want you to see me in my wedding dress." "All right." I couldn't refuse my dear sister's cute request, so I agreed. "Just, please, no speech for me. I don't want to stand out." "Oh, yes, that might be best. Sorry. But I am truly happy for your happiness." "I know, thank you." Understanding my feelings, Emily accepted my request without saying much. Relieved, I eagerly looked forward to the days leading up to her wedding. On Emily's wedding day, I dressed sharply and headed to the venue. Emily greeted me happily and introduced me to her in-laws. "Are you Emily's brother?" "I'm Tom, nice to meet you." "Thank you for the kind introduction." "Nice to meet you too." "Your name is Tom?" "It's the same as someone who helped us a lot. It feels like fate." "Haha, I guess you two are really siblings." Emily said the same thing when we first met. "Come on." That's what started our relationship. Emily cheerfully explained how they met. I was reassured to see that Tom seemed to genuinely care for her. Tom helps his father, the company president, and works very hard. "It reminded me of you, Mike. I can see how much Emily cares for you. I'm envious because I don't have any siblings." "Is that so?" I felt confident that Tom would make Emily happy, so I shook his hand firmly. "Please take care of Emily. She's the sister I've always protected and cherished." Tom, receiving my sentiment, nodded yes with a serious expression. "Yes. I promise." His strong words reassured me, and I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. So, I found out that Tom is a serious and kind person. Next, it was time to meet Tom's parents. I wondered what kind of people they would be as we headed for the introductions. "This is my father-in-law, and my mother-in-law is over there talking to a guest. John, this is my brother." "Nice to meet you, I'm Mike, Emily's brother." I'm John, Tom's father." His haughty demeanor matched that of a company president. Emily had explained that John was an old-fashioned man who had built his company from the ground up. I could understand why he couldn't afford to be lenient. "So, what kind of work do you do? What's your highest level of education?" I had expected this question, so I wasn't surprised, though the directness was a bit much. Emily looked worried, but I smiled and answered calmly. "I run a handyman business. My highest level of education is middle school." "What?" "I have no regrets about my life choices. I take pride in my work as a handyman. There is nothing to be ashamed of." "A handyman? Isn't that just day labor?" When he said that with a completely exasperated look, I thought, oh, he's the type who cares about academic background. The ceremony felt more like a party hosted by the groom's family than a wedding. There were several moments clearly designed to flatter John, causing many guests to smile wryly. After the costume change, it was time for John's speech. "Tom is truly exceptional, and I am confident he will continue to grow the company after me. The bride, Emily, is also wonderful. And I trust she will support him well." John might be a bit tipsy. His speech was fluent, but his eyes were slightly red. Still, I was genuinely happy that he acknowledged Emily. Feeling a surge of pride, I quickly dabbed my eyes with a handkerchief to catch the tears. But I do have concerns. Specifically, about Emily's brother. John's tone grew sharper, and I looked up. Mike only has a middle school education. That alone is an issue, but his profession is even more troubling. Oh no. The room started to stir at John's words. In today's society, it's problematic enough that the future brother-in-law of a company president is a mere handyman. Don't you all agree? His disdainful tone made it clear he was belittling me. It's one thing if he genuinely believed that. But it's another to announce it at such a joyous occasion. Was he truly here to celebrate Tom and Emily's wedding? Honestly, a brother who can only get day labor jobs with a middle school education is nothing but a burden to us. Everyone knew I was sitting at the bride's family table. I felt various emotions from the glances directed at me and wondered how to handle the situation. If this continued, Emily's special day would turn into a sad memory. That's enough. Just as I was contemplating my next move, Emily's shout cut through the tension. The sound of a chair falling echoed as Tom, John, and all the guests turned their attention to Emily. I thought it was terrible when I introduced Mike, but this is too much. What part of him is a burden? You don't know anything about him. Emily? Tom seemed just as shocked by Emily's outburst. You think it's a problem because Mike only has a middle school education? What's so bad about that? Do you think everyone in the world can attend high school without any worries? That's not how it is. Yes, we were poor. So what? Emily's eyes filled with tears as she poured out her emotions. She must have been holding back for a long time. She wouldn't stop until she had expressed everything. Our parents neglected us. We only got one meal a day, and on school days, nothing at all. Mike and I were so skinny that our neighbors worried about us. But we could still smile because he protected me. He's the kindest brother ever. Emily. Hearing Emily's heartfelt words, I felt my own tears welling up. Mike gave up his own education to work so he could send me to high school and college. Can you understand that, John? That sometimes people have to work instead of going to school, not for themselves, but for their family? Ugh. John grunted under the force of Emily's words. His complexion grew pale. After our relatives who took us in died in a tragic accident, Mike took over the handyman business. John. You might think being a handyman is just day labor, but Mike brings happiness to many people with his work. I respect and am proud of him more than anyone. So when someone insults him, Emily, I understand. You love Mike very much, don't you? Yes. Tom gently hugged Emily, who was overwhelmed with emotion, comforting her. That used to be my role, but I now knew for sure that I could trust Tom with it. As I dabbed my tears with my handkerchief, a ripple of applause started from one corner of the room and quickly spread, engulfing the entire venue in a wave of emotion. Emily's revelation had turned the guests into our allies. Mike, may I say it? Emily sought my confirmation, but I had a feeling she wouldn't stop even if I said no. Actually, Mike told me to keep this a secret, but I think now is the time to reveal it. Mike has been working on something else on the side. Some of you might know him. Knowing what was coming, I smiled wryly. He is the masked live streamer handyman. Right after Emily's announcement, gasps of what echoed around the room. My secret side job, which has become quite popular lately, is live streaming life consultations. Thanks to this, I have the largest audience in the US for life consultations. Since it's all voice-based, anyone who has used my service would instantly recognize me if I spoke. That's why I had promised not to give a speech. I was worried that if my side job was revealed, it would draw too much attention to me and ruin Emily's wedding. But now, there was nothing I could do about it. Resigned, I glanced at Emily, who seemed pleased to see the attention shift to me. While Emily seemed satisfied, the guests flocked around me, throwing the wedding into chaos. The MC, looking troubled, announced that the wedding would be temporarily halted and rescheduled with just close family members later. And the gathering dispersed. After the crowd around me finally cleared, I headed to the family waiting room, feeling awkward. The first thing I saw was John being scolded by a woman in an elegant dress, who I assumed was Tom's mother. John was kneeling on the floor, receiving a one-sided reprimand. I hesitated to interrupt. Excuse me. Oh, dear, I apologize for showing you such an unpleasant scene. The woman approached me with a smile and apologized politely. Nice to meet you. I am Michelle, Tom's mother. Nice to meet you. I'm Mike, Emily's brother. I'm sorry for ruining the wedding. What are you talking about? It was all his fault for speaking so poorly of you. If Emily hadn't spoken up, I would have slapped him myself. Michelle's strong words made me flinch. Besides, I am a fan of Handyman, the live streamer. Your work is truly amazing. I was just explaining your contributions and impact to him. Thank you. It's really a shame he didn't realize it even after speaking to you before the ceremony. I was happy that Michelle was a fan, but I couldn't help thinking that it wasn't John's fault for not knowing about Handyman. May I say something? Yes? I want to apologize and make amends with Mike. In that case, go ahead. But if you say anything disrespectful again, you know what will happen. Of course. With Michelle's permission, John stood before me. His knees were slightly shaking, probably from kneeling on the floor. I'm sorry for earlier. Even though I didn't know what you do, it was inappropriate to say those things in front of everyone. He apologized deeply. Emily also told me about how much you've sacrificed and worked hard. I couldn't do what you did. I respect you for that. I am proud to have you as part of our family. Please, forgive my foolishness? Yes. I look forward to being family with you. I shook his outstretched hand, and we reconciled. Later, in a peaceful atmosphere, we held another wedding ceremony for the bride and groom, which went off without a hitch. Since then, John not only doted on Emily like his own daughter but also took a liking to me. Recently, he even introduced me to a woman from his company. He recommended me highly for my character and work ethic, leading to a relationship that blossomed into love. I, who had never had time for romance due to work and taking care of Emily, experienced love for the first time. We continued our relationship smoothly, and this fall, we will be getting married. When I told Emily, she cried tears of joy. Despite our awful parents, Emily and I have both found happiness. I hope to continue creating opportunities for our family to gather and make our happiness even greater.